Hello and welcome to another segment of Interviews That Matter. I'm your host Raj Mehta. Friends, in this segment we bring those guests who influence our lives. This includes elected officials, policymakers, heads of major organizations and other dignitaries. It is my sincere hope that the knowledge brought in by our guests will help our community. Today, we have with us Assemblyman Andrew Raia. Assemblyman Andrew Raia represents New York's 12th district in Assembly. Let's meet Assemblyman Raia. Assemblyman, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for taking time.
My pleasure.
Morning. Assemblyman, I wanted to start with how did you get started in politics?
Well, I was kind of born into the business, actually. My mother's been the town clerk for the town of Huntington for the past 32 years. So I was being pushed around in the baby carriage, getting signatures on petitions at a very young age. I've always worked in the political field on her campaigns, starting running her campaigns at the age of 16. And then right after college, I had the great fortune, or I should say during college, I had the great fortune of having a mentor up at SUNY New Paltz named Jerry Benjamin, who was the majority leader of the Ulster County Legislature at the time. And being a Republican in New Paltz, and he was a Republican in New Paltz, we were probably the only two Republicans in New Paltz. And he spurred my political aspirations, and I began my senior year in college. I was actually an intern in Albany for an assembly member, John Cochran, who represented the Bayshore area for many years. And I got hired right out of college to start running legislative offices, and 10 years ago I got my opportunity to run for the state assembly.
So you have, you have this in genes, basically.
Sure, I had a choice: second generation politician or fourth generation hairdresser. Take your pick.
All right. So I guess, first mentor was your mother, obviously.
Absolutely.
Like, because that's where you learn a lot of things.
Sure.
From her, and then next will be the from New Paltz Assembly.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I guess I've worked for members of the county legislature, members of the state assembly, members of the state senate. So I had a very well-rounded exposure to all levels of politics and government, on all levels of government.
So first of all, I want to congratulate you for winning the election this year unopposed.
It was a hard-fought campaign, but I did not get 100%. I got 99%, which means somewhere out there somebody was writing in somebody else's name. But when I find them, no, no. And I take that as a sign that I have a very diverse district. It runs from the very liberal to the very conservative, and it's my job to represent a majority of the constituents and listen to both sides of an issue. And I think I've done very well over the last 10 years because, there is no Republican way to fill a pothole or a Democrat way to fill a pothole, as Senator Alphonse D'Amato used to say. There's only the right way to fill a pothole. And I take great pains to try and find that right way.
So then the Democratic Party could not find anybody?
They had somebody against me who declined the nomination during the declination period.
Oh, okay. And now you are in a newly redesigned District 12.
Yes, I'm going from District 9 to District 12, but only 11% of the district is new.
Oh, okay. So most of the district remains same.
Yeah, it's still predominantly in the town of Huntington, North Shore of the town of Huntington. Okay. Still has all of Deer Park, a big chunk of North Babylon, a big chunk of West Islip, and the new areas that I picked up. I lost some of Dix Hills in the town of Huntington, and picked up a little bit of Bayshore and a little bit of Brentwood in the town of Islip.
Okay, so pretty much, only 11% change. So
yes.
You didn't have to worry about too much, I guess.
No, however, the initial, under redistricting, the initial proposal would have had, my district would have been 91% new, and would have shifted from a predominantly North Shore district to a predominantly South Shore district. But a number of people, Republicans, Democrats, civic groups, they all came out to say, we like the job that I'm doing, and they would like to keep things pretty much the way they were.
Well, I see you have a lot of energy, so that helps, I guess, right? That's
Well,
in your blood, Italian blood.
not being married, no kids, gives me the opportunity to do this business 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that is an old expression. You are an assemblyman 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. When I go for my cup of coffee in the morning at 7-Eleven at 6 o'clock, there's nothing stopping somebody from coming up and either saying I'm doing a good job or maybe you should work on this. So you really, when you're out there, you're always representing the people.
So this is like your passion. I mean, do you think that is a thankful job or thankless job?
You know what? I think it's a thankful job. Not a day goes by that you get somebody who thanks you. Many instances, my staff has to take a lot of that credit because the backbone of a legislator's job is constituent service, in my opinion, and making sure that your district is well served. And I'm blessed with wonderful staff that don't often tell me the good deeds that they're doing, and then somebody will meet me on the street and say, "Let me tell you what your staff did for me." And we're a team in my office.
So I think it's good to have a good staff.
Absolutely.
Important, very important.
Absolutely.
Now in the assembly, obviously, you're in a minority. You're a minority ranking person.
On the banks committee, actually, the rank.
Also aging, right?
Yes, I've been on the aging committee on and off for my 10 years, and the health committee, and I'm also on the housing committee, and I'm also the vice chairman of the minority conference.
What does it mean?
That's a leadership position within the conference, and basically it's my job to keep everybody, conference or caucus as it might be called down in Washington, is when all the Republicans get together to discuss issues and behind closed doors. And as you can imagine, sometimes those conversations and discussions become a little unruly, and it's my job to make sure order is maintained.
Got you. So how do you deal with this being a minority?
Oh, I've been very effective. I've always said from day one, you can be a very effective member of the minority, you just can't be proud. And what that means is when I introduce a piece of legislation with a statewide need, passing local bills that affect my constituency is very easy to do. I've passed 15 bills in my 10 years up there. But if I have a national issue, or I should say statewide issue that I want to get passed, it's very simple. I draft the legislation, I circulate it to all my members, whether they be Democrat or Republican, and traditionally the first Democrat that says they want to be a co-sponsor of that bill, I'll go down to their office and say, here you go, you're number one, I'm number two, let's make good laws. Because I have found my constituents don't care if I'm number one or number two on a bill, they just want to know that I'm coming up with good ideas that help the people of New York State. And just this year alone, those electronic cigarettes that you see, believe it or not, it wasn't illegal for a 12-year-old to go and purchase them. Because only cigarettes were illegal. However, electronic cigarettes are still a nicotine delivery device. They can still get a kid, a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, hooked on nicotine.
Wow.
And amazingly enough, that was not illegal in New York State. Thanks to my legislation and working hand in hand with Linda Rosenthal, one of the more liberal members of the State Assembly from Manhattan. We put aside our differences and got this law passed. Senator Johnson was the Senate sponsor, and that bill is now law. So I have a number of pieces of legislation like that that have statewide impact that I've been able to get through.
So when you were a member of aging, what are the most issues that seniors face?
Living in their homes. And, I always believe that our seniors help build our communities, and they deserve to be able to continue living in those communities close to their families and their friends. And it's our job to thank them for all the work they've done. And in fact, in New York State, within the next 10 years, over 30% of our population is going to be over age 65. So, Florida may be called the blue-haired state, but New York is quite honestly right on their heels.
So have you like passed any legislation in the past? I believe.
Oh, I've been very active. In
right.
fact, just this year
Yeah.
alone, I helped lead the charge to restore the EPIC program, because last year that program was gutted. The dreaded donut hole that with the federal program that occurred, the EPIC program used to fill in during that donut hole, and last year that was eliminated. This year that was re-implemented. One of the areas that I've been working on is called NORCs, which is naturally occurring residential communities. And they were always big in New York City because you had seniors that lived in their homes for years and years and years and years and years, and over time you would have areas that would be populated heavily by senior citizens. Well, in looking at it, we saw the same thing was happening on Long Island. And actually, right in the town of Huntington is a NORC, and we've been able to expand that program. And basically what that means is we try to deliver services to seniors in their homes to keep them out of nursing homes, because we know it's a lot more cost effective to keep somebody in their home than it is to put them in a nursing home.
Okay, so I mean, you've been visiting nursing homes and everything.
Oh, sure,
a lot.
absolutely.
I hear that, so healthcare is the major issue for seniors, right? To be healthy, to make sure.
I would say that is one of two major issues for seniors.
Okay.
The other one would be taxes, which is an issue that transcends all age groups.
So taxes affects everybody.
Sure, but when you're a senior on a fixed income,
Yeah,
and you have to make ends meet, and your taxes are going up 7, 8, 10, 12% every year, that makes it virtually impossible for you to stay in your home. Fortunately, we did pass this year, one of our major accomplishments was a 2% tax cap. So now at least seniors will be able to kind of plan as to what their tax structure is going to be like over the years.
So now, when you say that in 10 years, 60%, I mean, New York will be
Over
like,
30%,
over
yeah.
30% seniors, right? What would happen then? Because taxes are going to go up, they're going to keep on going up. So that means senior will not be able to live here.
In many instances, they can't stay and they can't leave. Sometimes they get stuck in a situation. What we need to do is continue to work on our tax policies in New York State. I am the co-sponsor of a number of pieces of legislation that would freeze seniors' property taxes, and after the age 70 actually eliminate the school portion of their property taxes, which, as you know, is roughly 80% of their total tax bill.
Right.
But if we do that, we have to make sure that that tax burden is not shifted to the other taxpayers in the district. So New York State needs to step in and backfill. So we have a lot of work to do. There are a lot of creative ideas out there. Unfortunately, budgetary constraints over the past few years have hampered our abilities to implement a lot of them. It'd be nice if the stock market got back up to 13,000, because I tell people New York is pretty healthy when we're at 13,000 on the market. When it drops below that, we start to run a deficit.
Assemblyman will take a short break and we'll be right back.
Great.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Assemblyman, we talked about taxes, and 80% of the taxes is school tax, and out of 80%, I would say that another 80% of 80% is probably going on pension and fixed cost of the school districts or anything, because that you cannot change it, obviously. Yes. Those are the fixed costs mandated by law. Therefore, I mean, I know the school district has also very little leeway on, what they can do with their flexible money.
Well, as a result of the tax cap, actually, retirement costs, pension costs are exempt from a large portion of the tax cap. So when they say a 2% tax cap, it may not actually be 2% because of that fact. Unfortunately, years ago, we did the residents, the taxpayers of school districts, a great disservice.
Right.
When the economy was fantastic, we didn't require school districts and local governments to contribute anything to the cost of the pension system.
Okay.
And unfortunately, when as a result of the first stock market crash, our pension under the Constitution must be 100% fully funded. I disagree with that. I think, like anything else, the stock market goes up, the stock market goes down.
Right.
And maybe 80%, 90% would be a fair number, and that would certainly help alleviate those huge gyrations that school districts have to pay. But getting back to the initial thought is, instead of, for all those years that we allowed school districts to pay nothing, we should have said 3%, even if we didn't need it, because then our pension system would have been funded at over 100%, and they would have had less of these gyrations that are causing major problems. But there's a lot we can do to help school districts cover those costs, and that comes in the form of mandate relief. And I think that is going to be the mantra that that Albany is talking about this year, because we have a habit in New York State of shifting costs to local governments, whether they be towns, villages, or school districts. And we need to stop that. And I'm the sponsor of legislation that would basically say any future mandates need to be paid for by the state.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I mean, we are the one who's paying.
Correct. It's just taking money out of one pocket, sticking it in another, but in the end, the taxpayers are the ones that are still ultimately paying the bill.
Exactly, yeah. So do you think that pension reform is in the agenda this year? I mean, last year this year it was.
Well, sure, and we've done Tier 5, we've done Tier 6. Unfortunately, a lot of that is not, school districts aren't going to see a whole lot of savings until 20 years down the road. So we need to do something that helps offset those costs before 20 years, and that comes in the form of mandate relief. No child left behind on the federal level. In my opinion, the federal government should be out of the education business, because some bureaucrat in Washington certainly doesn't know what's going on in my district, and this race to the top monies. None of my districts are seeing any of that $700 million. It's all going to New York City. And we need to eliminate federal programs that do nothing, that are unfunded, that do nothing to increase our students' educational outcomes. That needs to be decided on the state level. If it was up to me, we'd eliminate the federal education department and return all that money to the states to spend on education. If that was the case, we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
Wow.
Because there would be more money spent the right way, that it just would be a non-issue. And the No Child Left Behind, if you ask school administrators what their #1 unfunded mandate is, that's a federal program that has, in my opinion, has not proven to increase educational outcomes one bit. All it does is increase reporting requirements, set standards.
Bureaucracy, basically.
Correct.
Right, there you go. You are, that comes to this question that, okay, now, idea becomes a law. How idea can become a law? Let's say if a citizen comes to you and they have a good idea about this pension.
Sure. It's
what is the process?
The process is someone comes to me with an idea. We turn it into bill form, assuming it's an idea that I think is worthy of pushing. Because as you can imagine, I actually have a file that says that's labeled "There ought to be a law." And I even host every year There Ought to Be a Law poster contest. And I go to the schools, and the kids come up with ideas that should be laws, and they draw posters with the idea. And I actually take the winner and I turn that idea into a law if possible. So they come from the very old, the very young, and everything in between. So you draft that legislation, you introduce it into the committee process, and then you try to secure a Senate sponsor. In my case, I try to secure some majority sponsors to help move that bill through the process. And then you hope for the best.
So basically, before even you put into the bill, you have to line up some sponsors and support
exactly, because you need an identical bill both in the Assembly and the Senate. And what's interesting is sometimes the majority party in my house, the Democrats, are unable to secure a Senate sponsor. But because I have personal relationships with the majority in the Senate, the Republicans, I'm often able to secure that sponsorship. So, everybody needs to work together in Albany, and often creating legislation is you don't necessarily like what it looks like as it's going through the meat grinder, but it's that ultimate outcome that you're shooting for.
So working in Albany is not as bad as working in Washington.
Well, what's amazing was we were once called, just a few short years ago, the most dysfunctional legislature in the country. And I will give Governor Cuomo a tremendous amount, a lion's share of that credit to bringing us together and working in a bipartisan fashion. Now Washington should be taking a page out of our book. And keep in mind, constitutionally, we have to have a balanced budget every year. Washington gets to print money, and as we have seen, they have not had a balanced budget since Bill Clinton left.
So, Governor Cuomo, what is his magic then?
He had a very large weapon in his arsenal, and that was called redistricting, because legislators by nature want to get reelected in the following year, and they can't do that. The governor was proposing an independent redistricting commission, and I had made a prediction 2 years ago that that was never going to happen, that there were going to be behind the scenes deals cut. And there was going to be no independent commission, that the Senate was going to draw their own lines, the Assembly was going to draw their own lines, and that's exactly what happened. So every time the governor didn't get what he wanted, he threatened that commission. And when that was done, he would find another weapon to hold over our heads. And this year, it's the pay raise. I'm not so sure that that's going to be a sufficient weapon, because I love my job. The legislature hasn't had a pay raise in 12 years. Believe it or not, more than that, it's 15 years. And believe it or not, we're one of the lowest paid legislatures in the country. County legislators make $93,000. Suffolk County legislators make $93,000 a year. New York City Council people make over $120,000. I represent more constituents than any of them. But yet we have not felt it appropriate when we had years of late state budgets, years of ongoing budget deficits, squabbling, ethics reforms were needed. I think there will be talk about it this year. I don't think it will happen.
But how often you do redistricting?
Every 10 years.
Every 10 years, right? So now 10 years, governor has no weapon anymore.
No weapon anymore.
No.
So he'll try to find something else. And he's been very effective at that. But most importantly, the governor has been outstanding in reaching across party lines. And, one of my biggest fears was Andrew Cuomo was going to be just like Mario Cuomo. And being a Long Islander, Mario Cuomo was horrific for Long Island. In fact, I was there when he said Long Island school districts don't need any additional education aid because they have polo ponies in their backyards. We all know that that's not true. Andrew Cuomo has treated every area of the state very fairly. And he's done an excellent job with the recent hurricane, and he realizes that Republicans will vote for him if he is a moderate Democrat, and he is, for the most part, shown that he is just that. He's actually a fiscal conservative and a social moderate. So, he throws a few things out there like same-sex marriage just to throw a bone to the liberal side, but for the most part, he's pretty much a social moderate and a fiscal conservative. And Dean Skelos, the majority leader of the Senate, will tell you he's been a great partner with the governor.
I think he is, because we had a Senator Skelos here on the show also, and he also said the same thing that about governor, that he likes working with the governor rather.
Absolutely, because he gets it, and he'll throw his budget out there, and it becomes a negotiation point. He doesn't necessarily try and ramrod all of his ideas through the process.
So now, do you think that being an attorney general helps?
That was Elliot's
job?
No, I think that was Eliot Spitzer's downfall, because Eliot Spitzer didn't make the transition from being an attorney general to being a governor. When you're attorney general, you can use your pulpit as Eliot Spitzer did, to beat up on Wall Street, not realizing that Wall Street in New York State is Main Street. Exactly. Without a healthy Wall Street, we don't have a healthy Main Street in New York State.
I agree.
And that's the ranking member on the Banks Committee that's coming out now. And I give that speech throughout the whole state, because people don't realize that. They don't realize that everyone on Wall Street gets bonuses from the secretary on up,
Right.
and that is part of their pay. And as a result of Elliot Spitzer
Right.
and President Obama's antics, as I like to say, now those bonuses that used to make up 4%, just the bonuses were 4% of our economy. That's down to 2%. Wall Street used to be over 25% of our whole economy. That's down to 14%.
Wow.
And those bonuses are now given in stock options. Well, unfortunately, New York State doesn't collect their cut until those stocks are sold.
Right, right.
When they were given out in bonuses,
They used
we
to
immediately got the money.
So in banking committee, I mean, your main focus was protecting the consumers.
The consumer, because I took over the Banks Committee for the Republican side of the aisle when we started going through this horrific mortgage crisis. And Long Island is still lagging behind the rest of the state in coming out of this crisis because our prices were artificially higher than the rest of the state and obviously the rest of the country. So it's going to take longer for us to right-size our market. And a lot of people had mortgages that should have never had mortgages in the first place. You know, we need to get back to that point where you need to put 20% down. You need a good credit rating. But at the time, the banks didn't care.
Yep.
Because they knew, well, if they skipped out on, they could sell the house and still make more than they were making.
Right, right.
Horrific business model.
Right.
Should have never been allowed to take place.
I agree.
And you know, I waited till I was 40 years old before I could buy my first house, and it wasn't until I got ran over on my motorcycle by a car that I had the down payment, because I'm, you know, a lonely public servant that doesn't make big bucks, and you know, we need to make sure that only people that can afford to pay a mortgage get that mortgage.
Right.
You know, I'm all in favor of giving everybody the benefit of the doubt and trying to help them. But I believe the way that we get back to everybody being able to buy a house is by improving our economy.
Traditional way.
Correct.
Right, basically, business.
Correct.
Traditional business.
Exactly.
Now, I want to turn into presidential election this year, right? Obviously, November 6th, President Obama got re-elected, and he's got like over 330 electoral votes, and Romney we were thinking that they were supposed to do good, but it didn't do good as it. What the Republican Party has learned from this now?
Well, I've always said since I've been elected, and I have 11% of my district is Hispanic.
Okay.
And I've always said, this is a natural population that should be supporting Republicans. Very Catholic, pro-family. They mind their budgets. They run households like a business. They do everything that Republican philosophy says they should be doing.
Okay.
But unfortunately, somewhere along the way, we've let them leave us. A lot of it has been over immigration. And unfortunately, the far right of the party has been dictating that solution. However, quite honestly, the Democrats and our president have done nothing on this issue, and the president made this one of his first campaign promises 4 years ago and has still done nothing on that issue. But then when we have extreme candidates running for the U.S. Senate like we did this year that talk about, and quite honestly, Romney himself talking about self-deportation, what the heck is that? Let's sit down, roll up our sleeves, work out a common goal, and have real comprehensive immigration reform in this state. But again, and quite honestly, a number of years ago, I had the opportunity to meet with the mayor of Tijuana.
Okay.
And his response was, "You think you have an immigration problem? Well, every single immigrant that goes from Central America, South America, all has to come through Mexico. And if they get caught, they get turned around, and they now become his problem." So he has a city of 3 million legitimate residents and 3 million illegal immigrants.
Wow.
And they don't treat illegal immigrants in Mexico that are non-Mexicans like we do. They kill them, beat them up, do all sorts of nasty things. And his response was, the easiest way you can affect or stop the problem with illegal immigration is enforce the laws that are already on the books. And unfortunately, our current administration, and unfortunately the next 4 years, is going to be more of the same. Turning your head, ignoring the law of the land, and I predict right now we will not have real immigration reform, and once again this issue is going to be kicked down the road, primarily because the Democrats don't want real immigration reform. They want this as a weapon to hold over the heads of the Hispanic community and say, we're the only ones looking after you. Well, it's time that the Republicans, and George Bush got it, Rick Perry got it, those were Texas governors. Any governor that's along that Mexico border understands that you need to work hand in hand with immigration and immigration reform. So we'll see what happens.
So do you think that, because of Mexican vote, I mean, you think about,
No,
all
it's not
these
just the
swing
Mexican
states,
vote, it's the
all swing
Hispanic
states,
vote.
I mean,
Sure.
you can think about Virginia, Florida, Ohio, everything, I mean, Romney lost.
Correct, but
It's not only Hispanic vote.
it's not. Well, Florida. I bet you can contribute to it.
Florida
It was
definitely.
very close.
Florida,
You can contribute to
right.
that. That should have been in the Romney column.
Right.
The other aspect are some of these right-wing extreme candidates, Senate candidates, that started talking about that sunk the Republican Party with women. When you start talking about rape and how abortions and the fact that most rapes don't occur, result in a pregnancy, that's nonsense to even be having this conversation. And I think that hurt us with the woman vote as well.
So the party has to control these people, basically.
Yeah, and that's it gets harder and harder when you have some of the right wing of the party. They all need to get together and work for the benefit of the party. I think if a Rubio is the presidential candidate next time, I think he walks in backwards. Time will tell.
So then, like right now, as we see the map of the country, there is a blue wall all around the country. And that, and on a get-go, Democratic Party has 246, I believe, electoral votes right there.
Right.
So
you know what? I like to say Ronald Reagan won New York once. There's no reason why a good Republican that speaks to the majority of the country can't have that happen again. Quite honestly, take New York City out of the mix. New York State is as red as the day is long. New York City is that one area that gives you a disproportionate share. But Rudy Giuliani got elected as a Republican.
Also Bloomberg.
Michael Bloomberg was never a Republican. He switched parties for his own benefit, and now we see what we have. New York City is the largest nanny state. In fact, under this most recent hurricane, the mayor is not allowing businesses to contribute food to food pantries because the city doesn't have the ability to test the calorie and the salt content. Hooey. It runs the gamut, and I'm very disappointed with Mayor Bloomberg and what he's turned into.
Now I'm turning into South Asian community because our viewers are all from South Asia.
Absolutely.
So what is your opinion on South Asian? I'm sure that a lot of people are.
We didn't have a chance to talk about this earlier. However, I've been very active over the last 15 years with the Shanti Fund.
Oh, Shanti Fund. Okay, I know that very well.
Arvind Vora, a good friend of mine,
I know him too.
I'm a member of the American Council on Young Political Leaders, and actually about 4 or 5 years ago, I hosted a delegation of young political leaders from India and from Pakistan.
Okay.
I put them together in a van for 2 weeks, drove them around, exposed them to local government, and here you have two parts of the world that normally don't see eye to eye.
Wow.
When they went home, they were hugging, kissing, and I guarantee you, if we do this more often with the younger political leaders or the aspiring political leaders, when they become old stodgy political leaders, they will have relationships and they will learn how to work. So those are a lot of what I do is concentrating more on the national and the world stage when it comes to my work with that part of Asia. Large part of my district as well, and I've always worked well with that community. And on the flip side, I work well. I have a number of mosques in my district. I'm an advisor to the Pakistani community, and if we can help bring peace to that part of the world right here in the United States, sometimes it may all start right here, and hopefully it will spill over. But again, another area that traditionally tends to be Republican, but in many times the Republican Party has driven them to the other side of the aisle. I think if the Republicans got all their ducks in line, they could once again be a very strong force.
They have to start accepting other people.
It's interesting. People don't know this. Every major policy when it comes to minority communities, has been spurred on by Republican administrations. People don't know this. Martin Luther King was a Republican. And it was at that time that the Democrats South were the racists. Somehow over these years, the Democrats have co-opted the Republicans on this issue, when it's always been the Republicans. Every single significant civil rights piece of legislation started with the Republican administration. And a majority of Democrats in Congress opposed them.
So I guess either Republicans change or Democrats.
I think the Democrats have been very good at co-opting issues that have been traditionally Republican and making them their own, and then vilifying the Republican Party. And that's very easy to do when you have a liberal media that's on your side.
So how can we help you, South Asian community?
Vote.
Okay.
Stand up for your rights. A lot of times the South Asian community.
How do you vote?
Well, a lot of the South Asian community, a lot of times they stay within their communities.
Right.
They don't often branch out of their communities and flex their muscles as a group.
Right.
And I can tell you, working with the Shanti Fund, and you're very organized, and I can give a list of zip codes that are within my assembly district, and the leaders in that community have the ability to identify everybody that whether they be Indian, whether they be Pakistani, or what have you.
Right.
They know their people.
Right.
And when they organize and become a political force, that's how you become part of the political process.
I agree with you, and community has to unite together, and community has to work together with the influencing powers here in this country. And my whole purpose of this show is really for that purpose, that people like you come in on my show and you share your knowledge, and therefore whoever is listener, they might gain something and they might come back to you. That's what my goal is really.
Absolutely, and like I said, I've been fortunate enough to be exposed to this community, your community, for many years, long before I got elected to the Assembly.
Okay.
I've been working with the Shanti Fund for as I said, 15 years.
Right.
And we just celebrated Gandhi's birthday not too long ago at the Dennison Building, and I was there.
Right.
I haven't missed one in 15 years.
Wow.
Because I think it's
Great.
important to interact with every subgroup of my district, because we are the melting pot. People come here to make a better lives for themselves, and you try to take the best of all those cultures and see what works, what might not work in government. And it's been my pleasure, and I look forward to continuing our relationship on that front.
Thank you. And we learn from each other. Basically.
Absolutely.
That's the key. Normally you never stop learning, otherwise you stop living. That's the way I see it anyway. Another thing is that means you like Indian food.
Love Indian food.
Okay, what is your favorite now? I have asked this question to Congressman Israel, Jack Martin.
It runs the gamut from tandoori chicken to curried goat. I like it all. In fact, I have a great little Indian buffet right next to my hairdresser, and I always time my haircuts so I can go next door and have lunch. And yeah, it all runs the gamut. A lot of the foods I don't know the names of, but even the desserts with the little balls and the honey, and rice pudding, a big fan of, and the different sauces, and variety is the spice of life, and I like it a little spicy.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Well, thank you so much for joining.
It's been my pleasure,
Assemblyman, and we really want to wish you good luck. I wanted to ask you. Well, let me ask you anyway.
Sure.
What is your future plan now? You have 2-year term, obviously, and you may have other opportunities coming up on your way.
Well, I'm always looking for other opportunities. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm not always looking for other opportunities. I'm very happy representing the constituents of the 12th, soon-to-be 12th Assembly District. Albany is a seniority-based place, and the more years you serve, the more effective you're able to push your agenda through. However, I don't operate in a vacuum, and a number of people have come to me, both Republicans and Democrats, begging me to run for town supervisor next year. I have another group that wants me to see me run for Congress. So I don't rule out any options. Politics is all about timing. And if the timing is right, then I may move on. But right now I'm looking forward to going back and making Albany the best place it possibly can be.
And be in a health committee and make us all healthy.
That would be nice.
Well, thank you so much.
It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. And If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, you can email me at rajmitv@gmail.com. That's again rajmitv@gmail.com. Until next time, see you. Thank you.